What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com. Late Tuesday afternoon. Packers practice number 10 is in the books. We've talked to Mike McCarthy, we've talked to Ted Thompson, we've talked to the guys in the locker room, and now I thought I'd come and talk to you fine folks, because actually, this is the time I enjoy. I don't enjoy all that other stuff. Jared, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Rich, hello. Thanks for hopping on. Doug, hey, what happened with LaTroy? Well, Troy Guion was released. The Packers dropping that press release literally like 15 minutes into practice this morning. Always fun. It's an odd timing, I got to admit. I didn't think that was going to happen prior to preseason games. Maybe they want to use that roster spot for something else. But he wasn't costing them anything, and they had kept him this long. So maybe they received some information about upcoming suspensions stemming from the incident in Hawaii this summer. But whatever the case, LaTroy Guion no longer a member of the Green Bay Packers. Guion out means Raji return. There it is, but we got Raji off the bat today. Very good. That was to be expected, though. Eric, I agree it was expected. It just I didn't understand the timing of it. If they were going to release him anyway, as you say, to be expected, why have they kept him around this long? Like I said, they weren't paying him. They deferred his bonus. He didn't count towards the 53-man roster for the first 4 weeks. He's been taking up practice reps for 2 weeks now. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm sure somewhere there's a story to be told, and hopefully we'll dig and we'll tell it. Somebody asking about Devon House. Like as he said in the locker room yesterday, they're being overly cautious. He'll probably be out a week. Don't expect to see him out there on Thursday night. I was wondering who's going to be taking Eddie Lacy down. We don't have Eddie Lacy normal. Are you talking about week one? Who's going to tackle Eddie Lacy? It's a good question. Maybe Mike Daniels. I know Clinton Dix, when Lacy first signed with the Seahawks, he had done a little shout out there on Instagram, but I'm not so sure should be talking like that. I mean, you see Eddie Lacy barreling down on you, you got to make some business decisions, you know? Will Mac address the Guion situation? Well, we don't talk to McCarthy again until we have no availability tomorrow. We won't be talking to McCarthy again until Thursday night after the game, the preseason game. Hey, truck. So I doubt he'll be asked about it there because there'll be lots of other stuff going on. But perhaps whatever the availability is after the preseason game, although they have pretty much 4 days off scheduled. Not days off, just days where we don't see them. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if there's not much news coming out of the preseason game, maybe he'll get asked about it, but maybe I'll ask him about it. But yeah, I don't know. We won't get Ted Thompson until next week, and ultimately he's the decision maker, and he's the one who needs to be asked about it. Did I like the Rodgers photobomb? I will admit, I had to go check the tape and make sure he didn't, flip me off or something, but it was very nice. It was very funny. And if you'll notice earlier in the video, I do one of these. That's Mike McCarthy walking by. So I got McCarthy and Rodgers involved in the post-practice video today, which was fun. Who are you excited to see on the Eagles? Sean, I saw that Alshon Jeffrey is finally practicing. I'm wondering how much he'll go, because I think he'd be a good test for some of these corners in Green Bay. Sam Shields always did a really good job against him, but obviously Sam Shields is no longer in town. Outside of that, I can't say too much is too exciting for me watching the Eagles. What to look for against the Eagles? Dean, I'm going to be watching the quarterbacks first and foremost. It was very interesting today. Brett Hundley took the initial reps with the starters when they started working against the Cards, against what they call the scout stuff from the Eagles' looks. But then Joe Callahan got a look with the ones during Move the Ball, which I found interesting. Obviously Callahan is the number 2, and he's going to get the majority of those reps, or so you would think. But Callahan getting reps with the starting group is I don't know if it's newsworthy, but it's pretty interesting. With Guion gone, when the season starts, do they still lose the roster spot? No, it's just as if he never existed, basically. Do we have enough pressure? Nick, that's one of the things we're going to be watching. I'm very curious to see how Kyler Fackrell and Jaron Elliott and whoever else they throw out there at outside linebacker, maybe Jonathan Calvin, how they do in real game situations, because in practice it's really hard to get a gauge. With the quarterbacks in red jerseys, guys are doing their initial moves and then letting up regardless of whether they're getting beat or not, or whether they're beating the guy across from them. So it becomes really hard to gauge how well the pass rushers are doing. So Thursday night will be our first kind of look to see how those guys look on the edge. And I doubt we'll see Clay Matthews, and I doubt we'll see Nick Perry much, if at all. So expect to see a lot of Fackrell and a lot of Jaron Elliott. How are Aaron Rodgers and Bennett looking together? They look great. They didn't do much today. Martellus Bennett and Jordy Nelson pretty much sat out. I didn't even see either of them today. You got to think they won't be seeing them much Thursday night. Aaron Rodgers only ran scout team for the most part with the number 2s. But when they have worked together, they've looked really good. There was a play, particularly on family night, which I thought boded really well for the offense, where the defense brought heavy pressure from one side. Bennett read it right off the get-go, turned and looked, and Rodgers hit him with a pop pass to convert a third down situation. That's what you need. That's what you want to see, especially this early in camp, to see them in sync like that. That's promising. How are we looking on defense? Ups and downs. It's hard to say when they're not allowed to hit, and they're not allowed to tackle. Josh Jones looks like the real deal, I'll tell you that. Mike Daniels is Mike Daniels. Dean Lowry is probably having the strongest camp out of anybody up front. But again, it's going to take till Thursday night when we get our first real look at these guys hitting opponents and wrapping up and covering guys and doing everything that needs to be done on defense. Will Montgomery be running back 1? Yes. Why did we was that Brett Good go? I don't know. It was funny enough. Rob Demovsky asked Ted about Brett Good today, and of course Ted pulled the "we don't talk about free agents" card. And Hart went out, the current long snapper, went out and had a shaky practice today. So we'll see what happens in that regard. I know Brett Good had a workout today, reportedly for a different team, not the Packers. So we'll see. What is Bennett's number? He'll be sticking with number 80. I know he had kind of put it out there on Twitter with Donald Driver that he may change his number out of respect for Donald Driver, but he's sticking with number 80. Blair, you are so lucky. I don't know, man. Just living the dream. Hearing Max McCaffrey has precise route running. He has looked good, and he has caught absolutely everything thrown at him. I can't speak too much to his routes without seeing the tape, but he has absolutely shined early on in camp here. Make or break year for Ryan? Yeah, I think that's fair to a point. I mean, he's got to contribute. It's going to be interesting to see how much he's allowed on the field, with as much as they're moving Burnett down into the box in that nitro package, and then Jones behind him. Both Ryan and Martinez, have kind of not been the odd men looking out, but they don't use those packages quite as much. So he might not have a ton of opportunities. I will say, though, I think Ryan's had a pretty strong camp. I think he's done everything that's asked of him. He's looked good. He's broken up a couple passes, had a couple interceptions. I think Jake's had a good camp. King looking like a number 2 corner. Jury's still out there. I think there's a good possibility it might be House and Rollins on the outside to start the year, but there's a long way to go. Got all the preseason yet to play out. King started well kind of early on, but I think, now that the kind of day in, day out of camp has settled in, he's learning that life in the NFL can be tough, and there's guys are gonna get his number, and he's got to bounce back and get ready for that next rep and let it get behind him. And I don't think he's done poorly in that regard, but it's clear he's not running with the ones anymore. Richard Rodgers injury update. Bo, don't have anything that I've heard or seen or been seen reported by any of our guys. Obviously, we'll be on top of it for you. He did leave practice with a trainer, but I did not see him in the locker room. So don't know what's up there. We may not find out until Thursday. Inside and outside linebacker status, looking good. Yeah, I think when you look at the inside backers with the additions of, when you put Burnett in that group and you put Jones in that group, they're pretty dynamic. And then you move Matthews inside as well sometimes. And, I think the outside linebacker spot is the question mark past Perry and Matthews. But inside, I think they're doing well. Do we sign a defensive tackle now? I doubt it, actually. They did sign the one from Arizona, but then they put him on injured. They waived him injured right away. I don't know what happened in practice. He must have hurt himself. But I guess it's a possibility. But I think they like the depth that they have currently. I know Adams being out for a while hurts them, but we'll see. You know, they literally like Ringo. I think Ringo's having a pretty strong camp. Turgo seems to really like him. There's a couple of those, an undrafted guy today that Turgo got after something fierce. So we'll see. We'll see. Can Kenny Clark prove his worth? Yes. Just got here. Did Bennett practice? No. Neither he or Jordy Nelson practiced today. I mean, they were dressed and they went into the Hudson Center, and then we never saw them again. Let's see. Going to be a playmaker? Yes, Jones will be a playmaker. There's no doubt. Who will be tie backup? TY. Sorry, I don't know what that is. If we make the Super Bowl, will you throw a party, invite all of us? No. Super Bowl run? Daniel, they're a contender. I don't think there's any doubts about that. Thoughts on Price? Price, you know, it's hard to get a read on some of the stuff he does because it's so, you know, everything he does is along the interior. The only time I really get to look at him is during their combo kind of half-line stuff. He looks the part. He looks stout, although he can get pushed around every once in a while by some of the bigger guys on the offensive line. I do wonder about his ability to hold up in there, down in and down out. But so far in camp, he's definitely looked like he could, you know, stick around. Can we still protect Aaron Rodgers? Absolutely. This offensive line is going to be excellent. I was looking at Jahari Evans today, both in pass pro and in the run game. It's like they haven't missed a beat. Now, obviously, no one's going to be as good as TJ Lang, who's one of the best in the business. But Evans is the real deal. Jordy, contender to the league again? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, maybe the idea that the tight ends may siphon off some of those touchdown catches, that has some validity. But, you know, for the most part, there's no reason he can't catch a bunch of touchdowns again. Who will be Aaron Rodgers' backup? Most likely Brett Hundley, but Callahan could sneak in there. So Callahan could make a case for it if he has a strong preseason. Coaches seem to like him, and he has been solid so far in camp. Although I will say, you know, after Hundley had probably his best night 2 nights ago, and then he had another strong practice yesterday, and today he looked fully in command of the offense. You know, getting to the top of his drop, throwing in rhythm. He seems to be progressing kind of the way they had hoped he would. I know things, you know, started off not rough for him, but he didn't look sharp early in camp. But that's kind of coming now as we get closer to the preseason, and I'm interested to see Thursday night if he takes another step. Do you think Rodgers' slow start last year goes with a lack of playing time in preseason? Got asked about this on the radio this morning. I don't think so. I think we've seen seasons where he hasn't played much at all in the preseason that have come out like gangbusters on offense. I do think there's a lot that goes into it, the types of defenses they play, where they play, how healthy they might be. But as Pete Doherty has written, and I agree with, you know, they'll take starting a little slower on offense if it means Aaron Rodgers is healthy for 16 games. Butler, Hall of Fame. Dustin, I couldn't agree more. With Guy on Cut, do you see the Packers using that money on one of their free agents? Well, the thing is they weren't really paying him anything. That's why I was kind of surprised they cut him. They had deferred his bonus payment, which actually had been due the day after he got busted in Hawaii. But then they moved that. So he was cheap labor. They weren't paying him anything. And he didn't count against the 53 for the first 4 games. So they haven't really, you know, freed up anything. Thoughts on Kaepernick and Cutler? What is this, NFL Network? I think Kaepernick is being blackballed by the majority of owners around the league. And I think Cutler is actually going to be surprisingly good down in Miami, to the point where he could Wally Pipp Ryan Tannehill. Are the Pack mediocre? Saw Rodgers was talking about that today. Okay, let's clear that up for a second, because I know Mike Florio put it out there that Aaron Rodgers told Peter King that, you know, we are not mediocre. And what Aaron was responding to was the leveling of the Packers settling for mediocrity. The accusation is always, because they haven't won more than one Super Bowl, you know, that means that they settle for mediocrity, which of course is absurd, as Aaron said. But then I saw Mike Florio frame it as, you know, Aaron Rodgers said they're not mediocre. Well, that's not what he said. And are the Packers mediocre? Absolutely not. And I think somebody, maybe it was Bleacher Report this morning, wrote, you know, without Aaron Rodgers, they're a 6-7 team or whatever, or 8-8 team. And that probably goes for most teams when they lose their superstar quarterback, other than the Patriots, because they had that 1 year where they won 11 games without Tom Brady, I know. But Yeah, I think they're a very good team. The deficiencies are well defined. We know what they are, and it's just a question of if they can overcome them. And by the way, that is true of 98% of teams in the NFL. No team is stacked the way maybe the Patriots are this year, but even they have flaws. It is not 1980 something where Bill Walsh's 49ers can stack all pros on the bench. If the Packers are mediocre, what will Marino's Dolphins or Kelly's Bills? It's a good question. Got to have a top-level QB to compete. That's right. Guy Uncut, it's Raji time. You're not the first to make that joke, but I do like it. It is funny. I saw Packers ranked 3rd in a power poll. Would you agree? Oh, power rankings. Bane of my existence. Sure, why not? All I know is they're a contender, and they're absolutely one of the top teams in the NFC. It's a question of, a few things, but it's a question of staying healthy, getting hot at the right time, and who and where they play people down the stretch. The health obviously is the biggest factor. You got to have a couple bounces go your way. The Patriots are a testament to that. Nobody wins the Super Bowl these days without having a break or two along the way. What was the highlight and the low light today? Good question. Highlight would have been Michael Clark again. A kid skied for 2 touchdown catches, one on a corner route from Brett Hundley over Demarius Randall, another over Kevin King in the other corner of the end zone from Aaron Rodgers, after which Aaron Rodgers ran up and gave him a big kind of leaping bump, like very excited. But then, to go on the low light side, later on, and my Twitter feed starts exploding with people talking about Michael Clark and what a difference maker he's going to be, etc. And, oh my gosh, got to put this kid on the 53. Sure enough, as soon as that happens, later on, in teamwork, Clark gets up the right sideline, sits down perfectly, by the way, right between the safety and the corner in cover 2. Taysom Hill fires a rocket right in the perfect spot. Clark goes up and the ball goes right through his hands. That's a bit of the rawness there. It's one thing to be able to go up and do these leaping catches and come down with them, and that's very impressive, but you've got to be able to do everything else that the position asks as well. And not to mention, you got to be able to contribute on special teams, and Clark has not done a whole lot on special teams. He's an incredibly raw football player. There's promise there, but I think he's like tailor-made for the practice squad. But we'll see what the preseason brings. We'll get in better shape this year if Jordy goes down again. I would think so. I think Devontae Adams stepping up last year and the way he's looked really solid in camp so far this year, I think that pretty much, kind of covers them in that case. Not to mention the addition of Kendricks and Bennett will open a lot of things up on the perimeter that weren't there the year that Jordy went down last time. Do you think the Pack will try to pick up any veteran help once after cuts happen? That's a really good question because of the fact that there's only one cut now, and it comes after the 4th preseason game. It's a possibility if there's someone they like, or if someone way down somebody's roster gets let loose. It's a good possibility that they'll know that it's coming. So maybe in that regard, but I doubt. They're not going to go and fill starting roster spots with any cuts late. It'll be bottom of the roster types. Who's our starting D-line? Daniels and who else? Well, it depends on what they're playing. If they're playing nickel, which they are in 90% of the time, seemingly, it'd probably be Daniels, and then a combination of Clark or Lowry, depending. If it's 3rd and long, you got to think it's probably you're going to put Daniels and Lowry out there. If you're talking base, then you've got Kenny Clark on the nose, you've got Daniels at one end and Lowry on the other. Ricky Jean-Francois will kind of come in waves on early downs. I don't think they're going to use him much in regards to the pass rush, but and that's, I think, your main rotation there. I think Clark will get on the field in nickel situations sometimes earlier, like on 1st and 2nd down. But I think on 3rd down you're going to see Daniels and Lowry in there. They tried Michael Clark on punt, kick, rush. Not that I've seen. Why didn't we pursue D'Angelo Williams? Because they really like the running backs they got, and I understand why. Every one of these guys has got talent, and every one of them looks like they could play in this league, other than maybe Stanback. I think he's been a little overwhelmed at times, although he's a good runner. I just think pass pro, he needs a lot of work. In the receiving game, he needs some work. But every one of those running backs can play in the NFL right now, as far as what I've seen through 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if they're going to be stars, but they're, or even frontline starters. but every one of them belongs in the league. There's no doubt about that. How is Lindsley looking? Like a seasoned pro. Is Max McCaff, sorry, missed it, went too fast. We need to get defense. Yeah, well, they're trying. How do you feel about the defense this year? A lot of questions about the defense, and I understand why. I said it earlier in the video, I'm going to say it again. I really got to start seeing these guys hitting people and wrapping up and tackling and bringing people to the ground. Because right now it's so hard to tell what's going on as far as their aggressiveness, their ability. They are more contentious in the passing game, I will tell you that. Joe Witt Jr. has drilled it into his guys that he wants contested balls every single time the quarterback puts it up. And for the most part, that has been the case. They're very much, you know, if, okay, you're going to catch it, but I'm going to contest it, or you're not going to catch it in my house, or whatever. But, you know, the pass rush, tackling, you know, the run game, you can't really tell anything because these guys, they make their initial move, and then they have to let up because either they're presented with a red jersey quarterback who they're not allowed to touch, or it's a running back who they can thud him, but they're not allowed to tackle him, they're not allowed to wrap up, they're not allowed to bring him to the ground. That's, you know, a big part of playing defense. So while we see these guys day in and day out, and you can tell some things, you can tell athleticism, you can tell explosion, or, you know, assignment assuredness, getting an idea of, you know, anybody outside of maybe Josh Jones, who early in camp was lighting people up until I'm pretty sure coaches told him to dial it back a little bit. For the most part, you know, these guys are not allowed to play defense until they get into a game situation. So Thursday night will be big in that regard. Brian, it is a nice day in Green Bay. No doubt about it. Our current D-line would make a nice 4-3 front from back in the day. You know, not only do I agree, but I know there are people inside that building right there that agree in the personnel group. But, you know, when Dom Capers is your coordinator and you've been running that 3-4 for as long as they have, I don't think they're going to switch just out of, you know, because of the fact that they got a bunch of bodies that fit the mold. Remember a few years ago when they opened in Seattle, we reported on it extensively. There was all sorts of talk about this 4-man front that they were going to unveil. They had practiced it, and oh boy, here comes the 4-man front. And then they got absolutely obliterated by Seattle every time they tried to run it. And then they shelved it and never ran it again for the rest of the year. I think it was 2014. You know, it's just not in Dom's blood. It's just not who he is. So I don't think you'll see a 4-man starting line until there's a new coordinator and or a change in defensive philosophy. It's not a classic 3-4, Rich. You got that right. It's very much a hybrid. But they still use almost exclusively 3-4 principles. Return guy right now, Trevor Davis has the last 2 days been the #1 punt returner, switching off with Randall Cobb from, you know, punt to punt. And then on kick return, they've been trying Davis. They've had Janis back there. They've been kind of rotating guys, but looks right now like Trevor Davis is the first man up, and, you know, we'll see. The lights come on. They're here on Thursday night. We'll see how he does. What is the price tag to trade Hundley, 2nd-round pick? I don't think there is any price tag right now. You know, I said it on the radio this morning, and I'll repeat it here. I don't think a team, barring an injury to a starter that is playing in a system that is like Green Bay's, this limits things, very much so. So, you know, if Eli Manning goes down sometime in the preseason, maybe the Giants make a call. Because, you know, Brett Hundley can walk into Ben McAdoo's offense knowing all the checks, the calls, the offense, the concepts, everything. They don't have to, you know, change much. It's not like last year when Bradford came into Minnesota and had to learn a new offense. He was NFL for a long time. You pretty much know stuff. But, you know, Hundley, he could step in and run that offense. Where, you know, if a team, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for any other team, you know, like I said, barring an injury to a starter in an offense that he's familiar with, it doesn't make any sense for somebody to give up a 2nd-round pick like you're suggesting and then have him sit the bench, which is essentially what he would do. They wouldn't be trading for some guy middle of the preseason, a 2nd-round pick especially, to have him sit for a year. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Anything that happens in the preseason to boost Hundley's stock will boost it for next offseason. When you... were you rooting for Braun or Dragon? Dragon, definitely. I love Braun, but I didn't want the Dragon to die. I love McCarthy, but if we have another bad year, pause. On defense, is it time for a coaching change? Not necessarily. Depends on why they have a bad year. they have a bad year because of injuries again, then probably not. If they have a bad year because they're badly outcoached, then maybe. But a lot goes into it. It's way too complicated to answer with a blanket statement. He wants Eli to die. You guys are evil. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here in a second. Give me one or two more, people. Come on. Show me what you got. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Yeah, it tends to be like that out here, but the view is so nice. Between Ryan, Thomas, and Martinez, who is most... Oh, I went too fast. You know, I've gotten used to McCarthy beard. Yeah, you know, he's definitely out there. Is Ted Thompson the Night King? I don't think so. Offense is going to get their points. Yes, they will. Go have a brat and a beer. Dale, that is the best comment I've seen all day. I think I'm going to do just that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for the time. I'm sorry if I couldn't get your questions. They do fly by really fast, but that just means you guys are really interested and involved, and that's what I love. Make sure you're checking out PackersNews.com for all the latest from today's practice and heading into Thursday night's preseason game. We'll have it all covered for you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you soon.